Most people assume that academic thinking is something you either have or you don't. That assumption alone keeps a lot of people locked out of ideas they would actually enjoy and benefit from. Academic thinking isn't a trait. It's not a personality type. It's not a marker of intelligence. It's a way of relating to ideas that most people were simply never shown. Not because they failed, not because they were uninterested, but because modern education is often a race to the finish line. It's designed to transmit information and hit benchmarks, leaving very little room to cultivate what I would call an intellectual orientation. We were taught to be finish line thinkers in a world that mostly lives in the middle. What I mean by that is this. Most people are taught what to know, what to memorize, what to repeat, and what to produce on demand. But very few people are taught how knowledge is formed, how ideas evolve, how disagreement functions without becoming hostile, or how uncertainty can be held without anxiety. Academic thinking begins at a very different starting point. It begins with the recognition that the most interesting questions don't have immediate answers, and that this isn't a problem to be solved, but a condition to be worked within. One of the first things academic training quietly teaches, often without naming it, is how to tolerate not knowing. Outside of academic contexts, uncertainty is uncomfortable, right? It's something to be resolved as quickly as possible. You feel it in conversations that rush towards certainty, toward strong opinions, toward decisive takes. Not because people are shallow, but because uncertainty activates anxiety. Think about the last time someone asked your opinion on a complex news story. That split-second pressure that you felt to have a take. That's the anxiety I'm talking about. We feel as though if we don't arrive at a firm stance, we're failing the conversation. Academic thinking gives you a way to exhale and say, I'm still looking at the pieces. Academic thinking moves in the opposite direction. It treats uncertainty as a legitimate cognitive state, a productive one. Scholars are trained to stay with ambiguity long enough for patterns to show themselves. They're not rewarded for premature conclusions. They're rewarded for precision, for restraint, and conceptual honesty. This alone changes the way a person experiences ideas. When you're no longer required to resolve every question immediately, thinking becomes calmer, more spacious, less reactive. Another quiet shift that academic thinking introduces is how one reads and listens. Most people are taught to approach ideas in terms of agreement or disagreement. Do I like this? Do I accept this? Do I reject this? Is this right or wrong? You see, that framework turns every idea into a position you must either defend or attack. Academic reading is different. You're not reading to agree or disagree. You're reading for structure. What problem is this person trying to solve? What assumptions are they making? What framework are they working within? What are the limits of that framework? What does it illuminate well, and what does it struggle to explain? You can find value in an idea without having to adopt it. You can critique an argument without dismissing the thinker. This ability to separate understanding from endorsement is foundational to academic thought, and it's rarely taught explicitly. In everyday life, we are often taught that to understand someone is to excuse them, or that to listen to an idea is to buy into it. But you can sit at a table with an idea, offer it a drink, and study its face without ever inviting it to move in. Once you learn this, intellectual life becomes far less combative. Ideas become objects of examination rather than extensions of identity. A third element that is often missing outside academic context is developmental thinking. Most people encounter ideas as isolated facts. You learn a theory, you hear a concept, you read a quote, but you're rarely shown how ideas emerge in conversation with other ideas across time. Academic thinking situates concepts historically and relationally. Thinkers are responding to predecessors, they're correcting limitations, they're reacting to cultural conditions. You see, ideas evolve because questions evolve. When you understand this, you stop treating ideas as static truths and start seeing them as tools developed under particular conditions to address particular problems. It's like looking at a map from the 17th century. You don't call it wrong or stupid because it's missing a continent. You recognize it was the best tool available for the sailors at that time. Academic thinking allows you to view modern ideas with that same grace. This is why academic thinkers can hold multiple models at once without having to declare one final winner. Different frameworks illuminate different aspects of human experience. Maturity in thinking involves knowing when a model is useful and when it's insufficient. But without this training, people often experience intellectual life as overwhelming or alienating. Complexity feels threatening rather than enriching. Disagreement feels personal rather than structural. Strong emotion becomes fused with belief because there is no internal architecture separating feeling from evaluation. This has psychological consequences. When people lack tools for handling complexity, they often default to certainty, not because it's accurate, but because it's regulating. Certainty reduces anxiety. It simplifies the world. It creates a feeling of orientation, even when it distorts reality. But that certainty is brittle. It requires you to constantly defend your borders and tune out anything that doesn't fit in. It's exhausting. Academic thinking offers a different kind of safety. Not the safety of being right, but the safety of being able to learn. Academic thinking doesn't remove emotion from thought. It helps regulate the relationship between them. It teaches you how to feel engaged without becoming consumed, how to care without collapsing into rigidity, how to question without losing coherence. I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about using bigger words or citing Latin phrases at dinner parties. That's performance, not thinking. Often, the people who appear the most academic are the least interested in the posture I'm describing. Performance is about having the answer ready. Thinking is about being willing to stay in the question. One is about looking smart. The other is about being open. What matters here is that none of this requires becoming an academic, enrolling in a program, or mastering specialized language. Academic thinking is not a professional identity. It's a cognitive posture. You've probably met people with 3 degrees who cannot do this, and people who've never finished high school who do it naturally. I am calling it academic because that's where these tools are traditionally sharpened. But the tools belong to the thinker, not the institution. It begins with permission. Permission to slow down when everyone else is shouting. Permission to ask a question that might sound simple but is actually foundational. Permission to let an idea stay under construction in your mind for a month, for a year. Permission to revise your understanding without experiencing it as a threat to your sense of self. Many people feel a quiet restlessness around ideas, a sense that there is more depth available than what is usually offered in public discourse. That restlessness is often a sign of readiness, not deficiency. It suggests that the mind is prepared for richer engagement, even if it has never formally been invited into it. Learning to think academically later in life is not a correction. It's an expansion. It adds layers rather than replacing foundations. It gives you more ways to inhabit your own mind with clarity and integrity. At its best, academic thinking doesn't make you more certain. It makes you more grounded, less reactive, more capable of holding complexity without losing orientation. And in a world that increasingly rewards speed, certainty, and simplification, that capacity is not ornamental, it's stabilizing. If this way of thinking feels unfamiliar, that doesn't mean it's inaccessible. It simply means it was never named, modeled, or encouraged for you. You were not excluded because you were incapable. You were simply never given the map. Once you recognize it as a posture rather than a status, the door quietly opens. That door is what this channel is interested in walking through.